Hello, Oliver.
Hello, Nick.
Can you tell me why Konstam at the Albert is different from other restaurants?
Konstam the Prince Albert is unique in that it's the only restaurant in London which sources 85% of its produce from the area covered by the Tube network. And that's all of our food produce, so dry goods, meat, vegetables, fruit. Fish comes from a little bit further afield in the local sea, so we're very, very committed to local sourcing.
What inspired you to do this?
I'm inspired to do that as a chef by the principle that if you set yourself a tight geographical boundary, then you're going to be very much at the whim of the seasons. And I love cooking seasonally. I love the feeling of being connected to the changing food landscape as the year goes by, and living within the inner city as I do, and working within the inner cities as I do. It gives us a much more of a sense of connection to the climate, a sense of connection to the weather, and a sense of connection to the world outside the immediate boundaries of London. So it's very exciting, and it pushes us creatively as well. It means that we have to constantly be dealing with new produce and new ingredients and incorporating them on the menu, which is a very changing beast.
Are your customers generally aware of how the food is sourced?
I think most of the customers know where our food comes from before they arrive and come through the door, because we have the television programme, The Other Chef, which explained a lot about where the food comes from. So that was a fantastic way of getting a message out to as many people as possible. And then we also have on our menu a little add-on which tells people about the local sourcing, and also word of mouth, because within the environmental community, within the local food community, there's interesting and exciting prospect for a lot of people, so word of mouth is spread a lot that way. So yeah, a lot of people come in because of our local sourcing policy, but we hope that they come back the second time because our food is good as well.
Do you think the restaurant industry is becoming more environmentally focused as a result of the television programme?
I like to think that in general everyone's becoming a little bit more environmentally focused all across the board. We've got to do something, otherwise we'll get up the spout, to be honest. But if the programme that we did has something to do with that and contributes to that in some small way, then I think that's a fantastic achievement. One of the things that I think is very exciting about Konstam is that the way we do what we do is very satisfying to us on a personal and professional level, and it doesn't have a sense of stale kind of being good for the environment. We do it because we're excited by the food that we get, and I think that that's quite often an important message to get across, of finding a way of working in any field which actually has a sense of symbiosis with your immediate environment, not necessarily just the environment on a grand scale. If you are working within the limitations of your environment, then it probably extends outwards a little bit better.
Many businesses within the food industry seem to be complicit in the destruction of the environment. Can locally sourced food realistically be achieved on a large scale?
A lot of industry, full stop, is complicit in destruction of the environment. We all have to work within every industry to make sure that we leave as little impact as we possibly can. There's a lot of us out there, and they all need feeding. And so there is it's such a recyclable, renewable demand that it feels like a very voracious beast. Whether or not it's possible to source locally on the scale that you need in order to feed everyone on the planet, I don't know. I mean, London itself has an agricultural footprint which is 25 times its own size.
Really?
But then that's a very high density of population, so that's to be expected. But it does make you think about how much land that is and where that land has come from. It's quite clearly not all in England. It's certainly not all in the home councils. And certainly, it doesn't matter how many rooftop gardens we have, we're still not going to be able to be a sustainable environment, sustainable food community. But doing more to source locally would definitely help the situation.
Does the restaurant industry have much of an environmental lobby?
I think that there are industries who potentially have more financial clout and therefore more financial lobbying power when it comes to direct influence on government. But the food industry is very much in the public eye these days, and politics is often very much led by public opinion, and rightly so. So where there's exposure, there's power. Whether we can use that power effectively and to the greater good remains, I think, to be seen in the long run. But I think more and more.
Okay. What have been the most difficult foods to source within the London Underground area?
Things that are too difficult to source we've abandoned quite often. For instance, we don't use any olive oil because there's no olives. Anything that's been too difficult to source within the area covered by the food network, we've quite often had to abandon because we don't want to compromise too much. At the same time, we are a restaurant, and it's very important that we offer a high quality product. Things we can't get, things like olives, any of the kind of Mediterranean sort of produce, aubergines, that kind of thing. So because of that, we've chosen our cuisine influence to be a Northern European one, which means that we can actually be a bit more faithful to the food without challenging what we can source too much. But we do allow ourselves a few luxuries like lemons and oranges and coffee. Our tea, and then where we can, we use as locally as we can. So our tea is from Cornwall, and our wines, we use a lot of English wines.
Tea's grown in Cornwall?
Tea's grown in Cornwall, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Tregothlan estate. We're looking now to try and source our charcoal from Kent as opposed to using a big charcoal supply, because we have a lovely charcoal grill. So, we're constantly looking at ways that we can. We're very lucky as well. A few things like having Morgan salt just up the road. Some of the best salt in the world at our doorstep is made life a little bit easier. So, where we can, we improve, and then if we can't, we don't use.
Does the food come mainly from the commercial sector, or do you use community schemes and sort of amateur producers?
We use a range. The majority of the food that we use, the produce that we use, comes from small independent farms, and then we also have a few people who have small holdings and don't work on any sort of grand scale at all. And then a couple of bits and pieces come from nice, big, ethical farms which are actually quite nearby. So we get apple juice from Chegworth Farm, which is in North Kent, and that's quite a big operation, but but local, it's great. And we have a really big farm down in Dartford. So it's a range of sources. I love it when we get things through from people when they just say, look, I've got some apples, can we? I've got some Kingsley's, I've got a few leeks, and that happens every now and again, but it's very rare. And a restaurant is quite a hungry, so